All right, let's get started here. So the purpose of I got like probably two or three different DMs of people asking me to explain SPACs and then the HOND pick specifically and kind of where I think that's at. So I'm going to start with just SPACs in general and kind of give everybody a background on what's happening with a SPAC, the purpose of them, the different processes they go through, and then I'll dive into HOND a little bit and discuss that one specifically. So SPACs are super simple. Stands for Special Purpose Acquisition Company. And here's kind of the way it works. So obviously for any company, any private company to go public, it's extremely difficult for them to do that and extremely expensive. And so they developed this SPAC process where basically a group of investors get together. They put in the seed money that takes a company public, in this case, HOND. So they raise money through the IPO. The investors put in enough money to pay for the IPO, which is generally $2 to $5 million, depending on which firm you go with. But very, very expensive. Takes years, obviously, in some cases, audited financials, all of that. And what they figured out is it's actually easier to take a company that has no financials, has no history, has no anything, no tax returns, anything like that, and take that company public because that company can very easily make it through those processes faster than a company that's been operational for 3 years and has to come up with audited financials and audited tax returns. And they investigate all of the founders. Most companies couldn't even make it through that process in terms of meeting the qualifications for the SEC to even approve your IPO. So a group of investors get together, they form a SPAC. The reason it's called a blank check company is because when they IPO, the investors don't know at the beginning what company they're even going to buy. And a lot of times they'll specialize a SPAC in different sectors. So they'll say, okay, we're going to go after nuclear or we're going to go after critical minerals or whatever it is. But they don't yet know their identified target of acquisition. So they form the SPAC, they IPO that SPAC. Generally, $10 a share is you'll see the SPAC start at $10 a share. That's pretty much common. 95% of the time, they'll start at $10 to raise the pool of cash that they need to then go make their acquisition. So then the third phase of this would be the deal hunt phase, also called the de-SPAC target. The reason it's called a de-SPAC target is because once they make that acquisition, it's no longer a SPAC. They have 18 to 24 months. And this part is, I think, the most important when you're evaluating the risk of a SPAC and why it's risky. They have 18 to 24 months to find a private company to acquire or merge with them. And if no deal happens in that time, the original SPAC seed investors have to give all of the investors back their money. So for those guys, generally the worst thing that can happen is not that they make a bad acquisition, it's that they make no acquisition at all. So that's why you'll see a lot of SPACs crash and burn because they don't find any good targets in that time zone. The other reason that people think SPACs are a little bit scammy is because in the event that they don't find one, they're just going to take whatever they can get because the other option. I just read a comment. The other option is the deal's over and all the investors get their money back. And none of them want that to happen because everybody just wasted their time. They get paid regardless if they close a deal. So it turns into this kind of buying frenzy in those 18 to 24 months. And I didn't make up the 18 to 24 months. That's what they have to be able to do it. So that's where the risk and the scamminess kind of comes in, is if you have the original seed investors that paid for the IPO that are just like, yeah, like that'll do. Because again, the worst thing that can happen is no deal happens and they have to give every investor their money back. So that's where kind of the like fear of SPACs comes in. And then obviously you're on a 24-month timer. So you only have 24 months to find a good target, acquire that target, and then that target becomes a publicly traded company. In the event that it works well, it's a pretty fast-tracked process to take a private company public without having to go through all of the things that I said at the beginning. So then the de-SPAC merger occurs. Once that's approved, the private company then merges into the SPAC and becomes publicly traded. And that's the de-SPAC transaction. So let's get into, well, hold on. Does anybody have any questions about just SPACs as the process and as a standalone topic specifically? Not talking about HOND specifically, just SPACs. Can we do a SPAC to buy out To Madre? No, we would definitely need more. We would need more seed investors. We'd need to start at higher than $10. I remember making bank off of Lordstown. Okay, yeah, I wasn't familiar with that one. SPAC stands for Special Purpose Acquisition Company. Yeah, I wasn't familiar with the Lordstown Motor SPAC. All right. So now let me go to, I'm just going to go back to the original Sunday pick real quick, and let's talk about HOND specifically, why I liked it at the beginning and why I still like it now. All right. Oh, there we go. Hold on. Oh. All right. Let's go down to, it's funny too, because I did this one when I had no internet. So it's my least fancy one. Okay, here we go. Okay, so obviously HOND was the SPAC that they're using to acquire terrestrial energy and to take terrestrial energy public. We can get in. I'll get into a little bit with terrestrial energy and why I think that ultimately they have a really good shot in terms of coming out on top, or at least in the top 3 to 5 when it comes to these nuclear companies that we're all kind of playing with here. But for HOND specifically, when I called it out, it was at like just over $15. They had voted on the SEC had approved them on September 26th. So obviously, if you're a publicly traded company like HOND is, and you want to make an acquisition of a private company, you have to file an S-4 with the SEC. They go through their little bullshit process, whatever that is, and hopefully you get that approved. In this case, on September 26th, the SEC released their results, and HOND was approved to acquire terrestrial energy. That doesn't mean that they will. That doesn't mean that they will ended up wanting to. It just means the SEC said, if you want to do this, you can. So then what has to happen in a SPAC is for the acquisition to be approved, the shareholders that I was just talking about have to vote on it. And again, there's a little bit of risk with that because the shareholders don't know ahead of time who you're going to acquire. So when you come back to them with your acquisition target, you're in a situation where they could be like, nope, we hate that one, find another one, and they could vote no to acquire them. In this case, obviously, very, very unlikely that would happen. Terrestrial energy, a lot of people, including me, think that ultimately, like I said, they'll be in the top, 1, 2, 3, 4 in terms of nuclear companies that end up, kind of winning this race or being towards the front of this race that we're all kind of chasing here. The next step for HOND is obviously October 20th. The shareholders will vote to approve the terrestrial energy acquisition. Again, that doesn't mean that it's done. Terrestrial energy could still tell HOND to pound sand. That doesn't mean that the deal's done. It just means that the directors of HOND have the authority from the shareholders to spend the shareholders' money to make the acquisition of terrestrial energy. And then HOND has said in quarter 4, so whenever that is, they will make that official announcement. And that official announcement's not going to happen until there's a signed contract between HOND and terrestrial energy that says you are going to acquire us, we are going to acquire you, everybody's agreed to terms, that deal's done. And then the deal is done, new ticker, and now it's a publicly traded nuclear company, and it's been quote-unquote de-SPAC'd. Well, not quote-unquote, that's what you call it. So that's where HOND is at. A couple things that I want to point out is when I first called this out, they had a market cap of $400 million. I was DMing to Madre earlier, who told me it's ran up to like $28 or something in after hours, and it has a market cap now of just under 800 million. So it's almost doubled in value since this call out. I still think that they've got a lot of room to run, and here's why. If you look at Oklo, which is also pre-revenue, and obviously in nuclear also, they have a market cap of $25 billion. And they're in, now people argue that they're way ahead of terrestrial energy in terms of being closer to getting one of their reactors open. But then my counter argument to that is, well, they had a longer path to go because they're building massive reactor facilities. Terrestrial energy is building these like little ones, kind of like SMR was, that they can be applied, they can be retrofitted for coal plants. There's a bunch of different things that they can do with these, and they're way more flexible. But again, back to the market cap thing. So it's trading at $28 right now with a market cap of less than 800 million, and they're also pre-revenue. Oklo is, I don't know what Oklo is trading at right now, but I know they have a market cap of around 25 billion, also pre-revenue in the same race that terrestrial energy is in. And so I think when you look at the disparity between the market cap of HOND that hasn't acquired officially terrestrial energy yet compared to an Oklo that's obviously a publicly traded nuclear company, I think we've got a little ways to go in terms of what the market cap of HOND would have to be after the acquisition to even get close or in the ballpark. I mean, if it goes to even $2 billion, now the stock's trading at, $55, $60 like SMR was. If you remember back in the day, I called out SMR at $17. That shit ran all the way up to almost 50. So I think we've got a lot of room left. I'll say this, we're playing in a speculative field, obviously, just like we are with critical minerals. Like, these companies don't have real revenue. They are spending almost all of their money. They're burning huge amounts of cash on research and development and all of the processes they have to go through. And again, I'm not like some fucking nuclear engineer, so I know enough about these to know if they're good plays or not, but I can't get into like the science behind everything. But I think that terrestrial energy has a really good shot. I mean, I don't see a world that exists where terrestrial energy isn't at least a $2 to $5 billion nuclear company with the position that they're in. They were selected as one of the 10 companies by the Trump administration, exactly like Oklo was. And so I just don't see how they don't have a ton of runway left. Now, obviously, after the vote on the 20th, right, just like any stock, it's not going to go straight to the moon, and just never even look back, never retrace, never consolidate. So I do see the potential after the 20th for it to pull back a little bit or have some consolidation or maybe range for a little while. But at some point, the market cap of HOND does not reflect yet the deal being done. And so I think with SPACs, institutional money waits until the deal is done. Like, they're not going to just jump into it. Hold on one second. Can you guys hear me still? Oh, okay. For whatever reason, it says I'm muted. I don't know why. Anyway. So, institutional money I don't think is going to jump in until that deal is signed, sealed, delivered by both parties. Because again, there's still a lot of things that could go wrong in terms of them not completing the acquisition. Obviously, I think that's very, very unlikely. I think both sides want this to happen. Obviously, if you're terrestrial energy, the timing is perfect with the Trump administration. You have all of these tailwinds behind you with you being selected, you being able to produce your product for 50% less energy than your competitors. All of these things that obviously I included in this original write-up that I thought made this a solid play. But I don't see huge amounts of institutional money flowing in until that deal is done. And I think we can see that represented in the market cap. I mean, there's just no way that terrestrial energy is worth less than a couple $1 billion. And right now, according to the market, with the state of the deal where it's at, it's worth $800 million. So I think we've got a lot of runway left. I don't think that terrestrial energy being acquired is fully built into the price yet. I just don't see how that's possible even at an $800 million market cap. It definitely wasn't at a $400 million market cap. So I think we have a lot of room left with this one. That's kind of the overall analysis of what a SPAC is, what they're trying to do, some of the different risks at different steps of it. And then overall, this one specifically, what HOND is trying to do in terms of acquiring terrestrial energy and making them a publicly traded nuclear company. I think if you looked at any of the competitors of terrestrial energy, or you looked at any of the companies in the 10 that were selected by Trump, I think terrestrial energy has the lowest market cap. So in my mind, that gives it the highest runway. That was one of the main reasons I like this pick from the beginning. So yeah, that kind of sums up everything I have for you guys on these two companies specifically. Does anybody have? I'll go back through the comments real quick. But does anybody have any questions specifically about HOND or terrestrial energy? And again, I'm not like a fucking nuclear engineer, but I do know how to evaluate these companies. Should you go leaps or just buy the stock? So if you go leaps, then obviously you're betting on terrestrial energy, ultimately. Oh, Mike, I had no idea you were a nuclear engineer. That's fucking cool. I always knew I liked you. No, I'm just kidding. All right, let's see. I'm just going to read through some of these comments. So again, back to the leaps. If you're going to buy leaps, then you're betting on them winning in the long run. And I'm not saying, I don't know enough about nuclear energy to know if ultimately they will win in the long run. Obviously, everyone's little write-up is going to say that they're the fucking best. But I do know the fundamentals of this play make a lot of sense, regardless of if they win in the long run. Would I be sitting on a bunch of long-term, out-of-the-money leaps on them? Probably not. And again, that's just not me. I'm not an investor. I'm a trader. So I'm looking for these setups. I want to make my, 80 to 200% hopefully, and then I'm on to the next one. So that's just not my style. But if you think that they're going to win in the long run, then yeah, why not? I was at a company where we went through a SPAC a few years ago. Yeah, I have a personal story that I'll share a little bit at the end. I didn't want to lead with that and bore everybody, but if anybody wants to hear that, I will. I came very, very close to being part of a SPAC, like maybe 5 years ago, with my first cannabis company. We came within like inches of doing it, and we actually ended up choosing not to do it ourselves. And then the company that did got totally fucked by them. So it was a good choice. But yeah, went through that whole process, learned a ton about SPACs during that and what they're trying to do. All right, let's get to the next one. When is the deal supposed to be announced? So the vote is on the 20th, the shareholder vote, but that's just an internal HOND shareholder vote. They're saying the official announcement of having a signed deal with terrestrial energy, they just keep saying Q4. So we'll just have to wait. It ends up being kind of a sum of the parts where HOND will merge and be worth $1.75 billion. I don't know where you came up with the 1.75, if that's like you're just throwing out a number or whatever it is, but yeah, I don't see how they're worth $800 million after they get acquired, which means the stock would have to continue to go up. Oh, okay, yeah, just an example. Yeah, like I threw out, like it's got to be worth. I mean, I don't fucking know. I'm guessing just like you are, but it's got to be worth, $2 to $5 billion. If you put it even remotely close to the other pre-revenue nuclear companies and what they're trading at, HOND's got a lot of room to run. Did GSRT go through the same process and that's why it changed? I have no idea, actually. But maybe at some point when I was in the GSRT, it was not a SPAC. But if they started as a SPAC, I honestly didn't even know that. But we killed it with them, so who gives a fuck? If the terrestrial energy doesn't go through and they don't find another target, do they just return money to the shareholders? Yeah, more or less. They are required to return that money minus like fees and different things that they have. But yeah, more or less, investors are supposed to get that money back. but you don't own all that money as a HOND shareholder. They dilute HOND shares by issuing new shares, so your stock will, in the short term, stay the same or drop, assuming the company is a $1.75 billion market cap. They dilute HOND shares by issuing new shares, so your stock will, in the short term, stay the same or drop. I mean, that's a potential, obviously, but that's a potential if any company chooses to raise money and dilute you. What happens after a successful vote? What would Terrestrial go public and get its own ticker? I forget the name of the ticker. They already have a ticker identified of what it's going to be. But yeah, once HOND is de-SPACed, then they have a new ticker that's basically just Terrestrial Energy Public. But obviously, the original seed investors are along for that ride also. But everybody then is under that publicly traded ticker. Bro, tell us more about the story. I will. I'll show you on Google, too, exactly how it played out. Can we convince Tuma to buy a large enough percentage to be an insider vote and sway opinion? I mean, Tuma's got money, but even at $800 million, if you wanted, for quick math, if you wanted 50% of it, you'd have to put in $400 million. So I don't know if he's got that kind of money. And if we throw in Dr. Josh, I don't think we're getting there either. They got money, but they don't got $400 million, I don't think. Let's see here. So it's a bit difficult to predict the exact price of the shares. I think given where Oklo is as a comp, it's possible HOND doesn't goes up much more. Yeah, that's an interesting take. I mean, I don't see how HOND doesn't go up more unless their market cap just stays at 800 million after they make the acquisition. But I do agree that, I mean, we're playing with a bubble, obviously, here, just like any of them are. These are all pre-revenue companies. So, I mean, they could all turn on us in a fucking hurry when you're dealing with companies of no real substance yet and all speculation. If they had to return the money, what happens to the stock itself since they didn't meet the acquisition requirement? Well, obviously, their stock would just absolutely fucking plummet and they would get delisted. If the merger is expected Q4, what are you looking to be out of the call before the merger? This is kind of the $1 million question that Tuma and I were talking about, which is like the play might be up until the vote on the 20th. And then we might see a huge IV crush after that. Because, again, after that, unless Terrestrial Energy says fuck off, the deal is going to close. The SEC already approved it. The people who wrote the checks that Terrestrial Energy is going to get already approved it. So unless something catastrophic happened, yeah, that could be the play. But again, if you're looking at institutional money, historically speaking, institutional money is not going to get into SPACs or not going to mess with them, big ones, until that deal is done and they know that it's done. SPACs often go through unless there's some fraud, etc. They do often go through, and again, back to point 3, which was they often go through because if they don't go through, they have to give all the money back. And so again, the worst thing that the seed investors can have happen to their SPAC is not that they acquire a shitty private company. The worst thing that can happen is they acquire no company. So you have to keep that in mind. They're going to make their money regardless. As soon as that deal closes, they've already made their money. Now, not as much as they could make if they, obviously there's upsides to it. If they got in on a hugely successful company, they're going to make more money. But they're not going to make $0 by acquiring a shitty company. The SPAC guys are still going to make their money. So that's why it's a little bit scammy, because it's like, well, okay, yeah, of course you want to make that acquisition. One, you're spending money that isn't yours, right? They control the money to some degree that the shareholders put in. So it's very easy to go fucking shopping at Louis Vuitton if you've got someone else's Amex. But if you're spending your own money, you're going to be a little bit more careful. Those guys are not going to be careful. They want to get paid. The worst thing that can happen is they've got to give that money back. Okay. Wait, so do derivatives, options, warrants transfer over the new... Yeah, they'll transfer over to the new ticker. I came in late, but just for DD, what are the percentages for completions of SPACs? That's a great question. I'm going to have to ask Sam Altman on that one. I don't know, like, overall, but it'd have to be high. Again, because the original guys don't make money if it doesn't go through. So this one is great, but in the past they've been trash occasionally. Yep, exactly. So I think the biggest thing to understand about SPACs is the motivation of the people who put it together. And again, I'll say it for the third time, the worst thing that can happen is they don't make an acquisition, not that they make a bad acquisition. So that's why a lot of SPACs, they're either really successful or really not. But at the end of the day, they want that deal closed. Absolutely. All right. It's tripping me out that my microphone says muted. Can you guys hear me? Okay. It's like tripping me out. On my screen, it literally says that I'm muted, and then it tells me to join voice to talk, so. Somebody just said they can't hear me. Okay, but everybody else can, so. All right. Tuma, you want to talk? Here, I'll unmute you. I don't give a fuck. Yeah, but that's pretty much it, guys. Is there any other questions for me? All right, Tuma, I just unmuted you. Or no, I didn't. How do I unmute you? Bruh. I'm not good enough at this part. Wait, did I just end it? What is happening? Oh, okay. Now you're out. Okay. Of course he is. Yeah, why are you asking then, fool? Also, I can't figure out how to unmute you, so we're going to have to do it next time. Probably for the best. All right, I'm gonna end the recording here. Oh no, sorry. If anybody gives a fuck, I'll tell my little fucking SPAC story very quickly. So I was in cannabis. There was a SPAC that came up called the Glass House SPAC. You guys can Google all this, by the way. It's all on Google. So at the time, there was a company called Element 7, ran by this guy named Bobby DeVito. Yes, great fucking name, great jawline, just like it sounds. Oh, hold on. Neil just texted me. Oh. Thanks, Neil. And they were doing exactly this. So they had 24 months to make acquisitions. What the first acquisition they made was they went up north and they bought something like 2 million square feet of greenhouse space that used to be used for oranges, which I know sounds crazy, but they were growing oranges hydroponically. And then they had this whole fucking plan of they were going to renovate this space. That company went out of business. I forget how much they paid for it, but anyway. So they were courting Element 7 and my company at the time to be the retail part of Glass House. So they wanted to bring in either all of his stores or all of my stores, and then basically we would continue to operate our retail storefront brand under Glass House. That was like the whole thing. This was still pretty early on for me. So I went through this whole process, met with those guys a bunch of times, reviewed contracts, the whole thing. They were like courting us and all this stuff. And ultimately I just wasn't ready to sell my soul, I guess. Like I wanted to keep building it myself, and it was pretty clear that like once I did this deal, it was just like that was it, and essentially they fucking owned me. And so ultimately I ended up saying no. Bobby ends up saying yes, and Element 7 becomes the retail aspect of Glass House. And he was like talking shit, and because him and I were like pretty, like we were friendly, but we were fiercely competitive on the retail side. And so he does the Glass House deal. I keep going on about my business, which was just building good stores and trying to build something cool that I would either sell one day or take public myself. Bobby decides after like 6 months, I don't want to be part of the Glass House SPAC. And so he literally just kind of starts doing his own thing, basically tells them to fuck off. And they're like, nah, bitch, we own you. So they sued him. They end up winning that lawsuit, basically bankrupts his whole company. They basically got all of his assets from him. Plus he had, I think, if I remember correctly, a $2.8 million judgment against him. And I think you can Google this. If you Google Glass House Element 7, there's like a million articles about it. Oh yeah, here we go right here. Google Glass House Element 7 and see what judgment they got against him. Yep, there you go. Yep, that was it. So I avoided that, and I could have very easily been Element 7 in that situation. The only reason I bring this up is because that's really where I learned about SPACs, because I was thinking about joining them. And then once I kind of figured out, honestly, once I figured out like, oh, they'll just acquire anybody because they're going to make the money either way when they make the acquisition, that kind of told me everything that I needed to know, and I just didn't want to be a part of it. And at the time, it seemed fucking stupid. Like, Glass House was this massive, oh, we just bought 2 million square feet of greenhouse space. I forget the name of the CEO. I think he was, I forget his name, but he was like exactly what you would think would be the CEO of a publicly traded company. I think he was like an army officer or some shit like that. I forget his name. And I just didn't want to be owned by them. Like, I didn't want to be controlled by them and be told how I was going to build my stores. I felt like I was doing something unique that nobody else was doing, and I just didn't want people to fuck with it. Ultimately, I ended up taking money from a group of Chaldean investors that then fucked with it, so I made my own mistakes down the road. But yeah, so that's how I even got involved with SPACs and really understanding, like, from the inside out what they're trying to do, what their motivations are, why they could be scammy, and don't join one unless you want to stay forever, as we learned from our friend Bobby. But kind of funny that ultimately all that shit talking got him nothing. Another question. Can we make a SPAC ourselves with a few investors, look at potential acquisitions, and close the deal? Yeah, we absolutely can. Any group of seed investors can go and form a SPAC and take it public. It's not... Now, generally, again, though, you have to have generally some sort of reputation of doing this, because you're asking investors to basically, again, write you a blank check, which is you're asking investors to give you money and you don't even know what you're going to spend it on yet. So they have to really believe in your ability to go execute it. Otherwise, it wouldn't be that good. So we'd have to just pick a segment of the market that we wanted to. Just fucking trust me, LLC. That's fucking funny, dude. That's fucking funny. That's pretty much what every SPAC is, though. Is like, yeah, just fucking trust me. Now, the shareholders get to vote, obviously. Damn, that's funny, though. That's funny. They have to trust you, obviously. Oh, wow. Chuck, of course. You can always count on Chuck. All right, guys. So that's pretty much all I have. Does anybody else have any questions or anything about HOND specifically that they want to talk about or ask questions? Otherwise, I'm going to end this, and then for anybody who missed it, I'm going to like not edit this video, and I'm just going to post it as is. So that is what's going to happen. What happened to your company down the road? So well, let me kill the recording before I go off on this bullshit.